Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Michael Schroeder. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast today. And it's going to be a great show. We got a lot of stuff to unpack from the NBA playoffs this weekend. If you guys didn't check out those games, you really missed out on quite a bunch of games that were great in their own right. And I encourage you guys to definitely continue to keep track with the NBA playoffs going on. Also, if you haven't checked out the most recent episodes from our podcast, please check those out as well. You definitely want to watch those and listen to those. Today's show is going to be very interesting. We got the breakdown of the New York Knicks against the Atlanta Hawks in Game 1. We have the Los Angeles Lakers and the Suns breakdown of Game 1. I talk about the Dallas and Clippers Game 1. And then I also talk about why Khris Middleton needs to be the Bucks closer in the postseason for them to be a championship contending team. Again, this is going to be a great show, and I look forward to going through all this with you guys. To break down the first segment, we're going to talk about the Knicks and Hawks, right? So, look, you guys have listened to me enough on this show to know I'm a humongous New York Knicks fan, right? I talk about them mostly on every show because I grew up being a Knicks fan. I enjoy the Knicks, everything like that, but yesterday was, I think, one of the best games so far, the first games of the playoffs, and I really do believe that. I mean, the atmosphere of Madison Square Garden, they had 15,000 people in the arena, which is crazy. The fact that the game was down to the wire, the fact that it was a defensive grind-out type of game, the fact that it was, big shot after big shot down the stretch, and it was just an incredible game, right? So just to give you guys a little bit of context before I give you guys the takeaways I took away from the game and the keys for Game 2 for both teams. The Hawks won 107 to 105, my apologies. Trae Young hit the go-ahead floater with 0.9 seconds left, and Julius Randle did not get his shot off in time to tie the game. And you probably saw Trae Young shushing the Madison Square Garden crowd and saying they got awfully quiet and everything like that. And, it kind of reminded some people of Reggie Miller back in the 90s when they played against the Knicks. Bogdan Bogdanovic had 18 points. Alec Burks for the Knicks had 27. Derrick Rose had 17. John Collins for Atlanta and Lou Williams from Atlanta had 12 and 13 respectively. And then you got Julius Randle had 15 points on 6 of 23 shooting. He really struggled in his first postseason game of his career. And RJ Barrett in his first postseason game of his career shot 6 of 15 and had 14 points. So that's kind of a little bit of the context for you guys. A little bit of a breakdown of what happened in that first game in a sense. So again, right? Great game, right? Great game down the wire. Unfortunately, my Knicks are down 1-0 in the best of 7 series. And I think the series is going 7 games. I predicted the Knicks would win in 7 games. I was not sure they would win Game 1. If you look at the takeaways, though, and I think you look at the series, you see 2 teams, I think, that have pretty even style matchups in terms of, like, the games are going to be down to the wire because of just the way that these teams play. So I have 6 big takeaways from the game, and I'm going to break them down for you guys right now. So the first one is that Trae Young was excellent, right? When you have 32 points, when you have 10 assists, when you make all your free throws down the stretch, and you hit the game-winning shot, especially this is Trae Young's first playoff series of his career. And I'll break down the Knicks defense and why I thought it wasn't very good on Trae Young down the stretch. But Trae Young took full advantage. He got to his right hand off pick and rolls, was able to probe the lane, and again, use his great floater game, and he was patient, right? Something he hasn't really been his first couple years in the league. He was very patient, though, and he allowed that to really get himself moving in the right direction. And in his third year, he's really taken off and become a much better player and allowed Atlanta to become a better team because he's getting guys involved. He's playing more under control. He's not relying on his three-point jump shot as much. And for the Hawks to be the team they need to be, he needs to be this level of greatness. And again, he was excellent yesterday. He really came out in a huge environment. Again, Madison Square Garden is not, I don't care when it is, it's not an easy time to play, especially in the playoffs, right? The playoffs are not easy for a lot of people. And he went out there and still got the job done, right? Which, again, shows me that the guy's got the capabilities of getting the job done when he needs to do it. And he was excellent. The second point I want to make to you guys, that turnovers and free throws really determine the game, in my opinion. If you look at the fact that Trae Young got fouled late in the game and made his free throws. If you look at like Julius Randle, right? Alec Burks missing free throws. Again, when you're missing free throws down the stretch, you're giving teams extra opportunities. Like Julius Randle missed a free throw that he could have easily made. Alec Burks missed a free throw he could have easily made. And when you miss these free throws, you're giving a team another opportunity, right? Again, they lost by 2. You make those 2 free throws and you make some shots around the rim that you missed, you have a great chance to win that game, right? So I think that you look at that, and that's a big portion. Turnovers, though, too. The Hawks won the turnover battle. They had 6 turnovers. The Knicks had 11. And I've talked about this enough, right? If you give teams extra possessions, you're not going to be very successful. And what I mean basically is that if you're turning the ball over a lot, you're getting teams easy opportunities to get baskets on the other end through transition, through being able to run a really easy secondary break. It's just, you don't want to turn the ball over, especially in playoff games. Every possession matters a lot more than it does in the regular season because the games are more high leverage and more intense in terms of the preparation the coaches put in, the intensity of the game, the intensity of the fans, the lock-in type mentality on defense, the attention to detail. So you got to be able to control the turnovers. And again, the Knicks are a young team. They got to be better with that, right? And again, that starts with Julius Randle making smarter decisions, right? And he's got to be able to make smarter decisions, which I'll get into that later. But the turnovers and free throws were also very big for Atlanta. Winning both of those categories down the stretch really paid off as they were able to take home this victory. The third reason is that Julius Randle had a very tough first performance in his playoff debut. And what I mean by that is pretty simple. Julius Randle had a very, very tough performance. He shot 6 of 23 from the floor. He had 15 points. He did have 10 rebounds. But again, Julius Randle's your franchise player. He's your franchise guy. And for him not to perform at the capabilities he's able to perform at, that does, in turn, make things more difficult for them moving forward. And what I mean by that, in a sense, that Julius Randle was rushing shots. He was taking ill-advised fadeaways. And as a result of that, you're not putting your team in the right position to be successful. And look, it's his first playoff game. I'm sure that Thibodeau will get him to adjust. I'm sure that he'll find a way to adjust because he's had a trend this year of when he's had a bad game, he'll respond with a much better game the next night. I mean, a good example is when they played the Dallas Mavericks at home and he played horrible. And then I think 2 games later they played at Dallas and he scored 40 points. So the guy can figure it out. I think he had a tough game in game 1. And despite the fact the starters didn't really produce anything, and Julius Randle really struggled, they only lost through a buzzer beater by Trae Young. So you look at that stuff and you're saying that the Knicks can be in good position in game 2 if Julius Randle makes the proper adjustments. And again, the playoffs are about adjustments, guys, right? It's just that's how it works. That's how it's drawn up in a sense, right? So you got to be able to make the proper adjustments in order to win. And that's where I go with this playoff kind of situation is that you got to be able to make the proper adjustments. And that's ultimately at the end of the day where I go with this whole argument. And that Julius Randle had a tough game. Now, the Knicks bench kept them in it, right? You look at Taj Gibson, you look at Alec Burks, who had 27 points. Derrick Rose had 17 points. Emmanuel quickly gave you 10 points. Again, Obi Toppin also gave you some good minutes off the bench. They dominated the game for the Knicks, right? They were able to really keep the game close, keep the game in their favor. And as a result of that, the Knicks were in a prime position to be successful. And you look at the fact that the bench was the reason the Knicks were in the game, that's something that needs to transfer over. Again, the others at times have to be able to step up in big moments. You look at like a Robert Horry, right? You look at a Ray Allen. You look at a Alex Caruso or a Rajon Rondo, or players that, were not necessarily the top players in the team, but had to make big plays when they came off the bench. And Derrick Rose and Alec Burks are even more key because the Knicks do struggle to score. As I did break down the last time I talked about the Knicks when they got home court, they do struggle to score points. So the thing is, the bench needs to be consistent. And yesterday they were very good. They're the reason the Knicks were in that game, and they were the reason the Knicks were able to really keep themselves within striking distance of the Atlanta Hawks, who are, in my opinion, a more talented team. And again, when you have a strong bench performance, that's going to only inspire more confidence, because you're saying, well, if the starters play normally how they play, they're in good position to at least win game 2, right? And I think the Knicks should feel confident going into game 2, because you look at the fact that their bench played excellent, and Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Elfrid Payton, and Reggie Bullock did not shoot the ball particularly well, and they only lost on a last-second buzzer beater by Trae Young, right? So I look at that, and I say the Knicks are in prime position to be, in a successful position to win game 2, right? Now, they easily could lose game 2, but I'm saying the fact their bench was consistent yesterday, if the starters pick it up, they're in good shape. So the fifth reason I'm going to go into, the fifth takeaway, is that the Knicks need to force Trae Young left. Not saying Trae Young can't go left, but Trae Young was consistently going one dribble to his left, between the legs off a ball screen, going to his right hand, probing in the lane, and either passing the ball or hitting a floater most of the time, right? Trae Young's a guy who prefers to go to his right hand, and the Knicks didn't really do that very well. When they were playing on the ball screen, the guys are playing one-on-one, they let him consistently get to his strong hand. And it's like, when you play against LeBron James, for example, you want to actually force LeBron right. LeBron likes to go left. And you don't want him to be able to get to his right hand. Jason Tatum's another example, right? You don't want Jason Tatum getting to his right hand, right? Now, LeBron's obviously a little different because LeBron can go both ways equally as well, but he is more prefers to go left. But Trae Young loves to go to his right hand off pick and rolls, and the Knicks consistently let him do what he wanted to do, especially in the fourth quarter, and he got fouled that way. He got easy floaters, layups. He got kickouts for threes or lobs to Clint Capella. And the Knicks can't play from behind on him, and they can't let him go right. Because Trae Young's a very crafty and smart player. You play from behind on him in pick and rolls, he's going to probe you, keep his body between you and the ball, and hit a little floater or lob pass to Clint Capella, right? So you got to force him left, and you got to also get him back in front of him and show your presence in front of him, right? You can't be from behind him, right, because he's quick. But you got to be able to play better ball screen defense than the Knicks play. They didn't play very good ball screen defense, and they didn't force him left. And as a result of that, they put themselves in a bad position. And that's a big problem for when the Knicks are trying to at least win a playoff series, is the sense that they basically are just putting an emphasis on allowing Trae Young to go to his strong hand. They can't let that happen, right? They got to make that an emphasis in practice of forcing the guy left, playing better ball screen defense. And look, Thibodeau's been in the playoffs many times before. He's got to make the adjustments defensively in order to do that, because Trae Young is the catalyst that makes everything going, right? John Collins has all-star level potential. You look at Clint Capella, a guy who can definitely give you like 10 points and 15 rebounds in the playoffs, right? You look at Bogdanovich, but Bogdanovich is a shooter, right? And where does that come off of? A lot of dribble penetration and kickouts for threes, right? So you look at what the Knicks did, and by forcing Trae Young left, you're preventing a lot of those easy kickouts. And you're also preventing Trae Young to get to where he's comfortable, right? In the playoffs, you can't, again, analytics show where a guy is going to dominate the game, right? And the Knicks continuously did not allow Trae Young to get out of his comfort spot. And by not doing that, they put themselves in a hole to get beat, right? And they allowed Trae Young to hit a pretty easy shot at the end. And look, they have to make the proper adjustments in game 2. It's what the playoffs are about, right? And that's kind of the problem when I look at the Knicks, is that they just continuously, for a great defensive team, continuously let Trae Young get to his strong hand and get to his comfortable positions and sweet spots in the court, where it continuously fell into his hands, where he was able to really dictate the pressure and what he wanted to do. So from that standpoint, the Knicks need to do a much better job, because in the playoffs, you got to get guys out of what they're comfortable with, right? Or else you're going to get beat, right? Think about what the Miami Heat did to Giannis Antetokounmpo, which I'll talk about that later on the segment when I talk about why Khris Middleton needs to be a closer. But they don't let Giannis just drive to the basket all the time because they know that's where he's comfortable. They make him beat the Miami Heat different ways, right? So again, you're not going to totally shut down Trae Young, but you got to be physical with him. You got to force him left. You got to play in front of him. You can't play from behind him. And you got to keep him out of the paint because the thing with him is that he's become a very good player in terms of having a great floater, in terms of being able to kick out for threes or throw lobs to Clint Capella or John Collins. So you can't allow him to get in the paint. And if any of you guys were watching on TNT, Kenny Smith made this great point. He showed video. By allowing him to get in the paint, he gets to orchestrate the offense at an easier pace, right? He gets to draw the defense where he can either shoot a floater, kick out to threes like I've been saying multiple times, or lob to the basket. And you don't want a guy getting in the paint where he's smart enough to make those decisions. Again, Trae Young did have 10 assists. That came a lot of times from the Knicks playing behind him, letting him go right, and not playing the proper defense. So there's takeaway number 5. And the 6th point is that the Hawks are the more talented team, but I still have the faith in the Knicks. So look, the Hawks have more talented players, right? Bogdanovich, Herter, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, John Collins, Lou Williams. These guys are all better than the guys on the Knicks, right? The Knicks have Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Derrick Rose, Alec Burks. Those are good players, but the Hawks have the more talented team if you're looking just from the eye test, right? So the Knicks I have faith in the Knicks because I think they're better defensively. I think they're more physical, but they got to be better in terms of executing on offense late in the games. Julius Randle has to play better. And defensively, like I said, they got to make things more difficult for Trae Young. They can't allow him to get to the sweet spots because the Hawks are a more talented team. And they're also like the 8th best offense in the NBA entering the playoffs. So if you allow them to get comfortable on the offensive end, they're going to score points. They have no issue scoring points. And I look at that and say the Hawks are the more talented team, but the Knicks have a great chance to still win this series because I think the Knicks have the slightly better coach, the better defense, the more physical team. But they have to come out with the proper execution in Game 2 because they really had this game won if they had played a little bit better defense down the stretch and executed slightly better on the offensive end, made better decisions. But that's what Game 2 is for, where you can take back the home court advantage going into Atlanta, and the Knicks really have to take advantage of that. So that's where I go with the last point. So now here are the keys, right? So look, both these teams it was a really amazing game in Game 1, but I have some keys for both teams as they go into this different environment and go into playing in Game 2, right? So for the Hawks, I have 4 different keys for them. Trae Young has got to be consistently great, and the reason being, he's the best player on the team. He runs everything on the offense, and he's a guy that just is a catalyst for their offensive success. So if he doesn't play well, if he's inefficient, turn the ball over a lot, they're not going to be as efficient of an offensive team either. The second point is that they need to play the same great defense on Randle, right? Double teams, throwing different kind of defenders at him, forcing him to take contested, tough shots. Again, he was 6 of 23 in Game 1. That's going to, you have to continue to do that in Game 2. And the third point is the shooters have to continue to make shots. Herter, Bogdanovich, DeAndre Hunter, they got to be able to make their shots when they're open, right? Because when Trae Young gets in the paint, he's going to kick out to the shooters, and those guys got to hit shots in those big moments. Now, they also got to be able to control the turnovers, right? They got to win the turnover battle, right? Because they had 6 turnovers, but they're a young team that sometimes Trae Young will turn the ball over a little too much. And he averages 4 turnovers a game. But if he's able to control the turnovers down more, then they can run a more efficient offense. So those are the keys for Atlanta. For the Knicks, Randle has to play better, right? He's the best player on the team. He averaged 24, 10.5, and 6 assists, right? 24 points, 10.5 rebounds, 6 assists. He was 6 of 23 and had 15 points in Game 1. He's got to be more efficient. He's got to be smarter. He's got to make better decisions. And he just can't let the moment get too big for him, right? He's got to, be patient, take what the defense gives him, and then, be effective out of that slot, right? That's what he's got to be able to do. The second point is the stars have to produce more, right? The bench really carried the weight of the offense in Game 1. The stars have to be more consistent because they're the ones that get the game going, right? So that the bench can't carry them to a victory. I know Derrick Rose and Alec Burks are really good players, but Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Reggie Bullock, they got to hit their shots and they got to be more consistent. Limit turnovers, third point, right? They had 11 turnovers against the Hawks. The Hawks only had 6, right? They got to control the ball better, right? They're a young team, but they got to be making smarter decisions, knowing where to be, knowing where the guys have to rotate if Julius Randle gets doubled. They got to be better in that area and in order to win, right? So that's the third point there. And the fourth point is that they have to get solid production from their bench, right? Continue to get that, because Derrick Rose and Alec Burks are guys that can come off the bench, and even Emmanuel Quickley too, and give a great spark plug on the offensive end. And they did that yesterday. So if the stars are still struggling a little bit, they got to be able to ignite that. Even if the stars are playing well, you need your bench to be solid and be consistent for you to be able to move on to the next round of the postseason. So again, from that angle, you look at the Knicks, and they got to have better solid production for their bench, right? Because their starters have to play much more consistent and better basketball, because they're the ones that get started. They're the ones that play the bulk of the minutes. But Emmanuel Quickley, Derrick Rose, and Alec Burks have to play with consistency that at least Derrick Rose has played with all year and Alec Burks. But Emmanuel Quickley's got to continue to play with that level of confidence that he showed in Game 1 and that he's shown all year, because the Knicks are going to need him to play big time, right? They're going to need it. They're going to need him to play at that level. And in order for the Knicks to be successful, that is something they need to do, right? Get the starters to produce more, limit their turnovers, get better play from Julius Randle, and get a solid production from the bench. And from the Hawks side, Trae Young's got to be great. They got to play great defense on Julius Randle. The shooters have to hit their shots, and they have to continue to control the turnovers, right? This is going to be a great series. I think it's going to go 7 games, but I still have faith that the Knicks are going to win that series. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when I come back, we're going to break down the Lakers and Suns Game 1, which was not really a shocker for me, but there are some glaring holes for both teams that I'm going to break down when we come back on to the next segment. See you guys shortly.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop looking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am Michael Schroeder, your host for this podcast. Once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode today. Much appreciated. If you missed my previous segment, I broke down the New York Knicks versus Atlanta Hawks Game 1, talked about my key takeaways and also just the keys that the teams have to take in when they look to have a better Game 2 performance, especially for the Knicks and even the Atlanta Hawks, who are looking to go up 2-0 in that series. Also, later on in my show, I'm going to be breaking down the Dallas Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers Game 1, as well as breaking down why Khris Middleton needs to be the closer for the Milwaukee Bucks in order for them to be a championship-level contender. Now, speaking of championship contenders, we're looking at the Lakers and the Suns Game 1, right? The Phoenix Suns are the 2 seed, and the Los Angeles Lakers, due to all their injuries, have now been relegated to the 7th seed, and they played a Game 1 yesterday, which was a little underwhelming. It wasn't a high offensive type of game. With that being said, though, it was good if you're a Suns fan. The Suns won 99-90. They're up 1 game to nothing in the best-of-7 series over the Los Angeles Lakers. And just to break down some scoring context for you guys, Devin Booker in his first playoff performance had 34, 7, and 8 on 50% shooting. Played unbelievable. DeAndre Ayton shot 90% from the floor and had 21 and 16 in his first playoff performance. And he had 8 offensive rebounds, just dominated the Lakers inside, which I was shocked about, to be honest with you. And For the Lakers side, you had LeBron had 18, 10, and 7, and then Anthony Davis had 13 and 7. Anthony Davis just did not play very well, which, look, so that's the context of the game, right? It was a defensive battle. The Suns definitely came out with a better game plan, and LeBron James always does this, which I don't really like this in the sense that he uses game one as a feel-out game. But, again, you got to have proper execution down the stretch in order for them to win game two, which is tomorrow. But that being said, the Lakers and Suns, I have about 7 key takeaways, and then I have keys for both the teams as they go into game two. So, look, this game was obviously not like the Knicks game, not necessarily as exciting if you're a Lakers fan because they only scored 90 points. Now, for the Lakers, they did allow 99 points, which that's what the Lakers hang their hat on is defense. But the Suns are also a top 7 offensive and defensive team in the NBA as well. So you're going to get good defense from both teams and good coaching because you got Monty Williams, and who's a Coach of the Year candidate, and then you got Frank Vogel, right? Just won an NBA championship last year with the Los Angeles Lakers, a great defensive coach. But all that being said, I want to get into my 7 takeaways from the game, right? And when I break down these takeaways, there are things I saw, there are my opinions on the game, like all this kind of stuff, right? So, don't always assume this is fact. This is just my opinion about what I saw and what were some glaring pros and cons for what happened for both teams too, right? So let's break it down. The Suns dominated the rebound area, right? They dominated the glass, and this was something I did not see happening, right? The Lakers have more size, right? The Lakers start Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They start LeBron James. They start Dennis Schroeder, Anthony Davis, and Andre Drummond, right? So Dennis Schroeder is about 6'2", LeBron's 6'9", Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is 6'6", Anthony Davis is 6'11", and Andre Drummond's about 6'11", 7 feet tall, right? The Suns, on the other hand, start Chris Paul at 6'1", Devin Booker at 6'5", Mikal Bridges at 6'7", Jay Crowder or Dario Saric, who are both about 6'8" to 6'9", and then DeAndre Ayton, who's 7 feet tall. Right, so the Suns have good size, but really at the power forward position, Anthony Davis has a humongous size advantage. Didn't matter, though, because DeAndre Ayton dominated on the glass for the Phoenix Suns as they won the rebounding battle 47-32. They out-rebounded the Lakers by 15, right? And the Lakers have to win those battles, right? The Lakers have to dominate the paint. When you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, both guys who can hit jump shots, right? I mean, Anthony Davis is a slightly better jump shooter, from the mid-range and stuff than LeBron is. But, they're both guys that, should dominate the paint, right? They're both strong. They're both athletic. They're both really talented at getting to the rim. They got to be able to dominate that matchup. And they didn't do that in game one, right? The Suns completely dominated the boards, and this can't be a going-on theme, right? You can't get dominated on the glass as badly as they got dominated. Think about it. They lost by 9 points, and they got out-rebounded by 15, especially DeAndre Ayton crushed them on the glass. And offensive rebounds are key because it gives Devin Booker extra opportunities. DeAndre Ayton can get easy buckets off of that. You're also giving guys like Mikal Bridges open opportunities, Cam Johnson more opportunities, Cameron Payne more opportunities, right? The shooters around the Suns, even Chris Paul, right? You're giving him more opportunities too. And that's a problem, right? That's a major problem for the Lakers as they continue to go into game two, right? You can't get crushed on the glass. That just can't happen, right? If you're trying to win a championship, you can't get dominated on the offensive glass and defensive glass, right? You got to be able to control the backboards and control the rebounding area because in the playoffs, every little thing counts, right? And the Western Conference is no joke this year, right? I mean, look, I predicted the Lakers would probably win the series in 7 games but the Suns can easily win the series. People saying that it's a cakewalk are definitely surely mistaken because the Suns have got the number 2 seed for a reason, right? And they dominated the Lakers on the glass from just being, in my opinion, the more physical team. And that made things very difficult for the Lakers. And again, that's also a very big concerning area. I mean, you got crushed on the glass as bad as you got beat, and you also had the size advantage at every spot, basically. So that's a bad sign. Again, rebounding, it does matter on size, but it also matters on technique and desire. And the fact that DeAndre Ayton was just dominating Andre Drummond and Anthony Davis on the glass, that's unacceptable. Anthony Davis had 1 rebound in the first half. He ended the game with 7, but, in the fourth quarter with like 3 minutes to go, he had 4 rebounds, right? You can't play that way. And speaking of Anthony Davis, that's my second point. He didn't show up, right? Did not show up at all. He was 5 of 16 from the floor. He was, shooting a lot of jump shots. He was, not playing super physical. He did not rebound the ball very effectively. The only thing he did positively is he had 3 blocks, right? But offensively, he was floating around. He wasn't making any sort of impact. He wasn't being aggressive going to the basket or in the paint. And look, there's no problem with him shooting jump shots. There's no problem with that at all. But you got to be dominating from the start. And look, I heard this morning someone suggest that the Lakers should put him at that center position and relegate Andre Drummond to the bench. That wouldn't be a bad idea, because you maybe get Anthony Davis to actually start playing aggressive and stop actually playing like he's, a third level scorer, and instead of just like, he has to be the leading scorer on this team. He's got to dominate those matchups. I mean, again, when you have DeAndre Ayton on you, you're more skilled and more athletic. I mean, you're faster than he is. You should get by him and get to the paint and, score. You've got Jay Crowder or Darius Saric on you. You should take advantage of those matchups, right? Again, he shouldn't, be stopped by these guys. And, he went right into their hands by shooting fadeaway jump shots and 3-point jump shots and relegating out to the perimeter and not enforcing himself inside. And as a result of that, right, he shot 5 of 16, had 13 points, and only had 7 rebounds. And a lot of those rebounds also came in like garbage time at the end of the game. For the Lakers to be successful, right, LeBron, I think, will pick it up in game 2. I think he'll be better. Even with the hurt ankle, I think he'll be better, right? I think he'll be, 20 to 25 points-ish. I don't really expect a whole lot more than that, because I don't think he's quite as athletic as he was early in the season because of that ankle. But Anthony Davis has got to dominate the Suns. I mean, he had 42 against them in a recent game. He's got to dominate them, right? He basically beat the Suns by himself. So he's got to be able to dominate that matchup. He has to be able to dominate it, right? And he did that with Andre Drummond, so with the lineup. So whether or not Drummond's starting or not starting, Anthony Davis has to be aggressive. He's got to be going to the rim. He's got to be, forcing his will. He's got to be getting to the free throw line. And he can't just be resorting to shooting perimeter jump shots and trying to be, the modern day big man, just being a pretty jump shooter. That doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? So that's my second point, is that Anthony Davis has to show up and needs to be better and needs to take advantage of his mismatches, right? He has a mismatch in this series, and he's got to take advantage of it. He can't be relegated to be shooting jump shots and not rebounding the basketball and floating around the perimeter. No, he can't be doing that. He has to be aggressive in attack mode all game long if they think they're actually going to get out of the series. And again, Anthony Davis is supposed to be a top 5, top 8 player in the league. He needs to start playing like it. He needs to start acting like it on a consistent basis. Because even against the Warriors, he was horrible for most of that game until the second half, right? He's got to be better. You got to be better, right? You can't be in the situation where you're not being aggressive, right? And right now, if the Jazz don't have Donovan Mitchell, the team that actually is probably the biggest threat out of the West at this moment in time, in my opinion, is the Phoenix Suns for the Lakers. I do. The way the Clippers looked in Game 1, which I'll get into later, the way that Denver and Portland are, Phoenix has got it kind of all together. I mean, I think Phoenix, if the Lakers were a higher seed, I think they would meet them in the Western Conference Finals. I think Phoenix is a very good basketball team, right? So, Anthony Davis has to be more aggressive. He's got to be better. The third point I'm going to say is that LeBron James needs to make his free throws and be more aggressive. LeBron James only took 13 shots. I get it, right? He wants to facilitate and feel the game out, but he had 8 points in the first 4 minutes and 10 points the rest of the game. That just can't happen, right? He's got to be more aggressive. He's got to be getting to the free. He has to get more than 6 free throws up at the line. He can't be resorting to shooting a lot of threes, and he's got to make his free throws. He was 3 for 3, and then or 3 for 4, and then he missed 2 free throws. That can't happen, right? You got to be aggressive, LeBron. You got to be better, right? Got to be better, and you got to stop flopping too. All right, because you're too big to be doing that too, right? LeBron's got to be better. He's too good and has been in too many playoff moments. And look, I expect him to be better in Game 2, but I don't like the strategy of feeling it out in Game 1 and not being super aggressive. He's just got to be aggressive, right? Anthony Davis didn't have it going. Be aggressive, right? You shoot 25 shots and you make 9 of them. Okay, fine, but at least I'll take you being aggressive, right? At least I'll take you being aggressive and trying to trying to win the game for your team and trying to go all out, right? Instead of just, trying to feel it out and get guys involved. Like, I know that's the way he plays, but that can't happen, right? Especially if Anthony Davis doesn't have it going. LeBron's got to be as aggressive as he possibly can be. And look, his ankle might be bothering him, right? But he's got to be better in game 2. The fourth point is that Booker and Ayton dominated their first playoff game, right? They did. They just dominated, right? You look at Booker, he had 34, 7, and 8. And you look at DeAndre Ayton, he had 21 and 16 and 8 offensive rebounds out of those 16 rebounds total, right? These guys were guys who were question marks for the Phoenix Suns because people were like, are they really going to be able to get it together? And they came out, dominated the Lakers, and really put a front of saying, Devin Booker really proved that he's an elite level shooting guard in this league. And that is the point of what I'm referencing here, is that basically you look at this game and you're seeing that the fact that these guys dominated. Right, the defense by the Suns, next point, was excellent. Right, holding the Lakers to 90 points. The Lakers shot terrible from 3 once again. You look at the fact that LeBron James only had 18 points. Anthony Davis only had 13 points. Again, LeBron James is the leading scorer on the team, and he only had 18 points. Right, great defense, great execution, great game plan by Monty Williams and his staff to be able to get that job done. Right, and especially look, you have Booker and Ayton who dominated that first playoff game, but you have great defense. That's going to carry you a long way. That's going to be able to help you withstand the runs that LeBron can make or Anthony Davis are going to make throughout the series because they have a good defensive game plan. They know how to execute properly down the stretch. So that is the next point I'm going to make there. The defense by the Suns was excellent, right? It was excellent. And I think that going on in the series, going to game 2, it has to continue to be that way. The sixth point is that, once again, the Lakers don't make free throws, right? LeBron James is 3 of 6. The team as a whole shot 60% from the free throw line, and the Suns shot 83%. When you got guys like Chris Paul, you got guys like Devin Booker who can make free throws. Even DeAndre Ayton can somewhat make free throws. Mikal Bridges, right? Jay Crowder. You got guys who can shoot and make free throws. That's key, right? In close games, you gotta be able to make the free throws, right? I looked at the Knicks game, right? Which I broke down earlier for you guys, and the reason they lost that game was turnovers and free throws and poor execution. Right? There were other reasons too, but again, you got to make your free throws, right? And the Lakers have had an issue, even dating back to last year, of being consistent from the free throw line because LeBron's not a consistent free throw shooter, and Anthony Davis has really dipped down in free throw percentage this year because he's just had a really down year. And in order for the Lakers to be successful, they got to be able to hit those free throws, especially because every point counts in the playoff matchups. Every little thing matters more because the game's so much more high leverage and everything like that. So I look at that, and that's kind of the way I saw this, right? The free throws game was huge for the Suns, and that really helped them out. And the seventh point is I kind of, I expected this to happen to an extent. Because the way that I think the Suns are a much better team than people give them credit for. I think the fact they were at home, and this is not making excuses. I just think that the Lakers, this is the problem with LeBron, is that he comes out, game 1 and feels it out. And I don't think the Suns are a team you can do that against because the Suns are going to come out ready to play because everyone's disrespecting them, right? Everyone's predicting the Lakers are going to win that series, including myself. But a lot of people say, it's going to be a 5 or 6 game series. And the Suns took that personally. I expected this. I thought the Suns were going to win game 1, to be honest with you. I really did. And the concerns for the Lakers were not very good. But the fact that they produced and won this game, I'm talking about Phoenix, shows that Phoenix can, make this series tough and even possibly win the series. So, expecting this to happen, I did in a sense because I think that you watch this game and you watch what the Lakers did, and you definitely see the fact that, the defense of the Suns was excellent. Devin Booker, I think, is, one of the top, 20 or so players in the league, 25 players. He's playing so well right now. And the fact that in game 1 he really produced is just so important going forward for this team. So he played a great, great game. Now, we can also look at the fact that, you have DeAndre Ayton played better, and Chris Paul didn't even play that well, right? He also had injury issues too, so we'll see what happens in game 2 with that. But again, right, I expect this to happen because, Chris Paul's a veteran leader who can get guys ready to go. And look what he did with OKC last year against a more talented Houston team, right? So he's going to get a more talented Phoenix team than the OKC team last year to be able to play up and make the series tough for the Lakers. Now, I look at the game 2, and I like I did with the previous segment, I'm going to break down some keys. I have about 3 or 4 for each team, and I think that this is going to be important, right? So the keys for the Suns, right, to continue to go up 2-0 is you got to get Chris Paul going. You got to get him healthy, right? He only had 8 points. He didn't really, exert himself so much in the offensive end. So you have to be able to have a better, more aggressive Chris Paul in Game 2 because you don't know how consistent DeAndre Ayton's going to be. I expect Devin Booker to still be very, very good, but I don't know how DeAndre Ayton's going to be in Game 2 because I think the Lakers are going to adjust to that. So you have to have Chris Paul be better in order for the Suns to go up 2-0. And the second point is that Booker and Ayton need to keep up this level of play, right? I expect Booker to do that, but DeAndre Ayton's got to be able to be more consistent. And I think that that's going to be important for the Lakers going forward. For the Suns going forward, excuse me. And I think that, you watch that Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton were dominant in Game 1 and need to continue to be that in Game 2. The third point is just defense, right? In order to beat the Lakers, you got to shut down their 2 stars, right? Or make it really difficult for them, right? They pretty much, neutralized both of them in Game 1 to an extent, right? So I think that they have to continue to play good level defense. They got to continue to play at a high level. And as a result of that, they're going to have to play defense at the highest level they possibly can if they want to continue to win and get by Game 2. Because just the way LeBron is, he's much better as a series always get on, and he's always good about coming back from Game 1 and playing better in Game 2. So that's an important thing too. And LeBron played one of his worst playoff games, I think, in recent memory in terms of just his aggressiveness. So that's where I go with that point. And for the Lakers, Anthony Davis has to play better, right? He has a mismatch, right? Either he's going to have DeAndre Ayton guarding him, who's quicker than, or he's going to have a smaller, defender like Jay Crowder, who's about 6'7", and Dario Saric is about 6'9", who both of those guys should not be able to stop him and make things difficult for Anthony Davis. So Anthony Davis has to be aggressive. He's got to be better. He's got to be more physical and everything like that. LeBron James needs to be the best player in the NBA. That's the second point, right? LeBron James needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be more assertive. He needs to play to his potential. I know he's got an ankle injury, but I think he can. He looked fine in Game 1. He's got to be more aggressive and got to be better. And the third point is that they have to rebound, right? They have to rebound. They have the size advantage. They can't lose the rebounding battle as badly as they lost it yesterday. They got to have some more urgency and play with some more toughness on that area of the floor. And the last point is make your free throws, right? You shot 60% and you lost by 9. You got to be better. You got to be better for the free throw line. Anthony Davis, LeBron James, you guys got to make your free throws, right? And that's going to determine if you guys want to win a championship or not, right? You got to make your free throws because free throws are extra points that lead to success in the championship, right? So you can't leave points on the line that, especially in a close game, that could determine whether you win or lose, right? So I look at all that and I say that's where the Lakers need to get better, right? So the Suns get Chris Paul going. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton have to continue to play at a consistent level, and then they need to focus on having great defense every night. For the Lakers, Anthony Davis needs to play better. LeBron James needs to be the best player in the world and play to that potential. They need to dominate the rebounding area, and they need to make their free throws, right? So that's where I go with this game. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when I come back, we're going to break down the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers game that happened on Saturday. And later on, we're also going to be talking about Khris Middleton and why he needs to be the closer for the Milwaukee Bucks. All that coming back up shortly.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com.
Back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Michael Shredder. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode today. Much appreciated. If you missed my previous segments, I talked about the Knicks and the Hawks Game 1, which is a classic game, unbelievable game. I gave context of what happened, takeaways, and the keys for the Game 2 for both of those teams. And then for my second segment, I talked about the Los Angeles Lakers and Phoenix Suns. Talked about how Phoenix was able to win Game 1, some takeaways I had from that game, as well as looking at Game 2 and some keys for both teams. Now, we're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers on this segment, and later on my last segment, we're going to talk about why Khris Middleton needs to be the closer for the Milwaukee Bucks in this postseason. But Dallas and the Clippers Game 1. So, last year in the bubble, the Clippers played the Dallas Mavericks in the first round, and it was a 6-game series. It was a classic series, great games. But in my opinion, I think Dallas could have won that series if Porzingis stayed healthy or if Porzingis didn't get ejected in Game 1. And I think that Dallas was good enough to beat the Clippers. I think this year they're even more so capable of beating the Clippers. And you saw, if you guys watched that game, you saw it in Game 1, how this team is definitely capable of beating the Los Angeles Clippers. And for some context, Dallas won Game 1, 113-103. Luka Doncic, once again, proving that he needs to be more highly considered, maybe into a top 5, top 6 player in the league. He had 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists. And for the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard had 26, Paul George had 23. Both did not shoot a great percentage. Dorian Finney-Smith had 18. Tim Hardaway Jr. playing, again, high-level play like he's been playing all year, had 21 points. Kristaps Porzingis struggled, had 14 points. And what's cool is actually, or interesting, the Dallas Mavericks outscored the Clippers every single quarter, right? Every quarter they won, right? And that's a really cool thing to see, because sometimes in a lot of playoff games, it's, a team will win the first half and the second half is completely lopsided, or, again, winning every single quarter basically tells you from start to finish they took control of this game and, wanted to beat the Los Angeles Clippers. Because for some context, the Los Angeles Clippers, lost 2 games, which I think, was more of a strategic thing, saying, we're going to rest our guys and play the Lakers later. But, it looked like they were like avoiding the Lakers to an extent, right, from what people saw. And just to play Dallas, too, which, some people were like, it's going to be a cakewalk. They're going to easily beat Dallas. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not going to be a cakewalk. Dallas is a team that's capable of beating the Clippers. They have the star talent to compete with the Clippers. I don't also trust the Clippers in the playoffs. I think they're the most overrated team in basketball, and I don't think it's even close. And look, they could prove me wrong and win the series in 5-5 and then go to the NBA championship and win it, right? They could totally do that. They're capable of that, but I don't really see that from them. And Game 1 didn't make me feel any more confident in the Clippers than I felt in them going into the playoffs this season anyway, based on how they performed last season. And just for some context, guys, I actually had a lot of faith in the Clippers going in. I thought they were going to make some noise. I thought they could possibly beat the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. I ultimately thought the Lakers were going to win the championship, but I thought in the bubble the Clippers looked a lot better than the Lakers. So I thought, the Clippers, when they get everyone together, they're going to figure it out. But I learned my lesson from that and saying that you have to have good chemistry in order to win. And you think with a different change in head coach, you think with more games together, Rajon Rondo coming in, they would be more prepared. And look, they lost Game 1, which, look, it's one game that there's still 3 more wins that Dallas has to get in the series. But the fact that at home opening game you lose, it's not really a good sign, right? So I got a lot of takeaways from this game that I'm going to break down in a second. But basically, just understand, guys, that when the Clippers did what losing those games, it did. I looked at it more as like they were being strategic in what they were doing. We'll rest the guys but they had a week off to prepare for the Dallas Mavericks, and the fact that they came in and they just looked like the same old Clippers again, it didn't really fill me with confidence that they even can win this series. Right, I think Dallas is going to win this series. I thought that when this happened. I really think that Dallas is capable of beating them. I was looking forward to this matchup. And to be honest, it's going to be interesting to see what unfolds in Game 2 for the Clippers, right? Are they going to come back with a vengeance and actually show me some different things that they didn't show in the playoffs last year and in Game 1? Or is Paul George going to just play and shoot 8 of 18 or 8 for 20 or worse percentages, and Kawhi Leonard just going to shoot bad percentages too? Because everyone blames Paul George, and rightfully so. Paul George has not been very good in the postseason in recent memory, and he was much better in the second half yesterday, but 2 days ago, but down the stretch he still wasn't great. But Kawhi Leonard needs to be better too, right? Like everyone's saying how Kawhi Leonard is at LeBron James and Kevin Durant's level. That conversation needs to die down until this guy starts to prove people wrong. He had one incredible postseason, and since then he really hasn't been as great. I know last year against Dallas he averaged 32.8 points a game, but against Denver, remember those fourth quarters from Game 2 through 7, or Game 5 through 7 especially, he was horrible. He shot like 28% from the floor in fourth quarters. And you're not going to win many games if Kawhi Leonard is playing, especially if he's your number one option, if he's not playing to his potential, because Paul George has not been very good in the playoffs, so you don't know what you're going to get from him. So if Kawhi Leonard's also not playing at a high level, that's not going to help them either, right? But anyways, right, let's get into the takeaways, right? The first one is that the Mavs are more than capable to win this series. I think people saw that, right? They can shoot the three really well. Luka Doncic, when guarded one-on-one by any of these defenders, he can dominate any of them. When you double team Luka, they have the role players to be able to make it happen. And also, Porzingis, needs to get back into rhythm. He did not play very well in Game 1, and he's a guy that can definitely give you 20 to 25 points, and he even scored 30 in some games of the playoffs last year. Remember the bubble? He was really, really good. So Dallas is more than capable of winning the series because of the talent they have, the coaching by Rick Carlisle, the superstar play of Luka Doncic, and he can't be stopped by the Clippers, right? And defensively, they actually showed me that they can actually play better defense this year too, which is important as they go into Game 2. The second takeaway I have is the Clippers showed a lot of the same issues from last year, a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same issues. Here we go again with the Los Angeles Clippers not playing to their potential, right? And it's not just, you look at Paul George, right? And look, I think it's not very fair to call him all those nicknames that people call him, but again, he didn't have a good first half. Down the stretch, Paul George did not play up to his capabilities. And look, 8 of 18 is not bad. He didn't play bad, right? But he didn't play well, right? And he's got to be better. They got to get over the top, right? But Kawhi Leonard in the second half once again showed that he's not as elite as you think, right? He's a top 5 or 6 player. But in the late game moments, he struggled, right? He missed shot after shot. And, credit to Maxi Kleber. I know he got dunked on really badly. But for the most of the game, I thought he played very good defense at Kawhi Leonard, made things difficult for him. And, there's going to be a lot of adjustments they need to make. Also, look, defensively, they're supposed to have, this great perimeter defensive team, right? And let's be honest here. If you watch that game, if Luka was one-on-one with any of those guys, did you actually trust any of those defenders to stop him? I didn't. Right, Kawhi Leonard couldn't stop him. Paul George couldn't stop him. Marcus Morris couldn't stop him. Patrick Beverley can't really stop him either. And for people saying Patrick Beverley is this elite level defender, or even at any of these guys, I don't see it from a team standpoint. They might individually be great defenders, but I don't see it on a consistent basis whenever they go against the Mavericks. I don't see it. I don't see a consistent basis for these guys. I don't see a consistent play level that makes me confident in this team to be able to shut down a guy like Luka Doncic. And again, if they shut down Luka, like the other role players stepped up, which I'll get into later. But again, they're supposed to be this great defensive team. They didn't do that either. And then again, the ball movement of this team also is a big problem, right? It's a lot of ISO ball, and not a lot of stagnation in the offensive end. And again, if you're the Clippers, you got to be better than that. You can't be like this all the time with just a lot of stagnation and little ball movement, and Kawhi Leonard going one-on-one ISO, and Paul George jacking up step-back jumpers with a hand in his face. And you're not going to win that way, right? You're not going to win games that way. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to perform to your highest level. And I don't think that for the Game 1, I saw a Clippers team that makes me confident that they can win an NBA championship. And everyone falls into this Clippers trap, right? I was, again, if the Suns were not playing the Lakers in the first round, I think the Suns are the second best team in the Western Conference. I think when Utah's fully healthy, I think Utah's excellent, right? But I think, if Donovan Mitchell's not back, I think Dallas, if they win the series, Dallas could beat Utah too, right? Because Dallas is a tough matchup for the Clippers because the Clippers can't stop Luka Doncic. So when he gets in the paint, he can find his shooters. He can find Porzingis, right? And Dallas's role players are better too. Again, the Clippers are just showing me again that they're, look, they lost those 2 games, which was again, very weird and kind of a funky situation in my opinion. But then you look at the fact that game 1, they just, they couldn't stop Luka Doncic, and they haven't been able to do it all year. They really haven't been able to stop this guy. And, you have home court advantage. You got to be able to get it done. And again, that doesn't bring me confidence. Look, it's one game. I get it, right? Things can turn around easily. But they showed me the same problems they had last year, which is a ton of isolation ball, little ball movement, bad contested offense. Bad offense that leads to contested shots for them. And, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard not coming up big in the clutch. I know Paul George had a good second half, but down the stretch he wasn't very good. Neither was Kawhi Leonard. A lot of clanks and bricks off the backboard. And Luka Doncic scored 1 point in the fourth quarter. Didn't really matter though because he made smart decisions and he got the other guys open shots, and the role players stepped up and knocked down their shots. The Clippers didn't seem to do that, and the Clippers are showing again the same old problems. And I thought with Rajon Rondo, he at least would get the leadership angle to do that. But I was one of the guys who was more skeptical about the Rondo move than other people because, look, Rondo's a great playoff performer, but it's hard to get guys who are so used to going isolation ball and also guys who just haven't been great, the last year and a half in the playoffs to just get up and step up their plate. And I know Kawhi Leonard had a great series against Dallas last year, but again, he's had games in the fourth quarters recently where I question. He's been nursing a foot injury. He doesn't quite look, he looks healthy, but again, 9 of 22 from the floor is not going to get it done. If you're Paul George, 8 of 18 from the floor is not going to get it done, right? And for this team to get to their potential, they got to play better. So the Clippers looked like the same old Clippers to me in game 1. That's why I think Dallas, in my opinion, is going to win the series in 6 or 7 games. The third thing is that the Mavs role players really stepped up big in the fourth quarter, really made big contributions because Porzingis did not play very well. So you have Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been, continuing his excellent play where he had a solid game where he had 21 points and also a huge driving layup. They made play after play. You look at Dorian Finney-Smith, who had 5 threes and 18 points. You look at Jalen Brunson, who gave you 15 points off the bench. And you look at just like the defense of Maxi Kleber. You look at, Porzingis being able to, get some layups and dunks at the end of the game. And if Dallas can get, Dallas's role players, people are just completely overlooking them. Dallas is a better team this year than last year. They got a better record. Dallas is a better team than they were last year. And they're a team that, has a lot of space on offense because of how they want to play. A great coach. And the role players stepped up and played big when they had to. So that's an important point to understand is that, the role players stepped up. Like how the role players in the Knicks stepped up in game 1 for them, even though they've so lost. You look at the role players for the Mavs, that was a big reason they won. Big reason they won, right? A huge reason. And that's why, as a Mavericks fan, you should have confidence against the Clippers because they can't stop Doncic one-on-one, but they decided to trap him and double him. That's where you have good offense and good coaching. You know where to flash to and get the ball and then kick out to the opposite side for threes or look down low for easy layups or dunks. And they did an excellent job with that. Excellent job. And role players are they really stepped up big, and that was a big key for Dallas as they continue to try to win game 2. The fourth takeaway is that Porzingis needs to be better, right? Plain and simple, Porzingis needs to be better. 14 points, I think it was like 5 of 15 shooting or something like that. 4 rebounds. He's got to be better, right? He's got to be more aggressive. He's got to be, when he gets mismatches, looking to be a little bit more physical down low. He's got to be more active on the glass. And he's got to get more of his rhythm back. Run the floor, right? Get easy buckets down low before you start jacking up contested threes. And as a result of that, I think he'll be able to get it down and be better. But he's got to be more consistent, and he's got to play more consistent basketball for Dallas to even get over the hump. Because think about it. Dallas won game 1 by 10, and Luka played fantastic, but Porzingis did not even play that well. I expect Porzingis to be better. So if he plays better, I think, the Clippers are in serious trouble, I think, right now, but I think they'll be in more serious trouble if Porzingis comes out in game 2 and gives you like 25. It'll just be a bigger problem. So I look at that, and I think that's a problem for the Clippers going forward. And that's why, and I look at the other reasons, it's game 1, right? So the Clippers have a lot of games left. They can, turn this around very easily and, come out and have a much better performance in game 2. But it wasn't a good performance for them in game one, right? And that's why game two becomes that much more critical for them, and they have to come out and perform to the level they're supposed to perform at. They have to perform like a championship winning team and not like a team that doesn't know how to, get it done in the clutch, right? Another key point, though, to take away, guys, that three-point shooting was a major difference, right? The NBA is a three-point shooting league. It's turned into that now, right? It's a big three-point shooting league, and it's been highlighted by a lot of incredible play, based on the high-level three-point shooting and everything like that. So you look at the fact that the Clippers were the number one three-point shooting team in the league entering the postseason. Well, Dallas completely dominated the three-point shooting area of this game in game one, right? Dallas shot 47.2% from three. The Clippers shot 27.5%, right? So it was, they shot 20% points better from three than the Clippers did, right? It's because they had better offense. They had more efficient offense. They moved the ball. Luka got in the paint because no one in the Clippers could guard him, and then he would always, be able to see where the play was developing, make quick kickouts for threes, and dominate that area and be effective. So I look at all this, and I look at the way that they played, and I see a big difference because, again, Dallas is a team that can really shoot the three very well, has a lot of space to operate because of the three-point shooting. But the Clippers are the best three-point shooting team in the NBA, and the Dallas completely dominated in that area. And going forward, the Clippers have to be better in that area, but Dallas has to continue just to, especially because Luka's going to get every defense thrown at him, right? So Porzingis didn't even shoot well from three, so if he shoots better, think about it. Dallas has, I think, the better coach, I think the better offensive system, and I think that's going to ultimately help them out. I know the Clippers had the better offensive numbers during the regular season, but again, the playoffs are where schemes get different, and Dallas has also gotten a lot better offensively as the years went on, and I think it's because Luka's getting in the paint more because he's in better shape, and and he's gotten better. And the fact that Luka's three-pointer is also better than it was last season has also helped out a lot too. But Dallas just made threes and made big plays when they had to make them, and that really turned things in their favor in that game. The ball movement, like I said, was so key, right? The ball movement was so key in this game because what happens with ball movement is it makes the defense rotate, right? And when you have the defense rotate, you can get easier opportunities to drive, easier opportunities to make passes, to shoot jumpers, because you're getting the defense to scramble, to be out of position, where guys have to keep, maybe be out of position more than they would like because you're moving the ball a little too fast, right? And all that turns into is an opportunity for the offensive team to get where they want to get the shots they want to get, because if they're moving the ball, they're getting in the paint, they're kicking it out, the ball's swinging side to side and getting in the paint, and they're penetrating, they're able to get the shots they want because they're executing the offense the way they want to execute it, right? Dallas loves ball movement, and the Clippers didn't have a ton of ball movement, and that's where the problems arose, and that's why they lost game one, was because the ball movement from Dallas was excellent, and the ball movement from the Clippers side of things was not that good. And that's going to be that's the problem I see going forward, is that the Clippers have to show me that they actually can move the ball and not rely on ISO offense. And they got to be better in that area, right? They got to be better in that area. And then you also look at the fact that Clippers role players did not step up either, right? Zubac had 8 points. I think Serge Ibaka had 8 points. Like Patrick Beverley and Rondo both had 10. But then you look at the fact that Marcus Morris had 4 points. I mean, Nicholas Batum, I think, had like 6. Again, you can't rely just on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to score, because it's easy to guard just two guys, especially if they're, guys who have not been super efficient in the playoffs recently, like Paul George for about the last 4 or 5 years, and Kawhi Leonard last year against Denver, even after game one, and the fact that he's also not completely 100% healthy. Again, you have to have better contributions from your role players, because you need other guys to step up because of the way the defense is cracked down on star players in the postseason. And that's something that they have to adjust to, and Tyronn Lue's got to make adjustments for as they go into game two. Another point, though, is that the rebounds, Dallas won 42-39, right? Besides Porzingis, who's 7'3", he had 4 rebounds, but the Clippers have the size advantage in every position pretty much. I mean, Maxi Kleber's 6'10", but then you have Zubac or Zubac, who's 7 feet tall. You got Marcus Morris, who's 6'9". You got Kawhi Leonard, who's 6'7". You got Paul George, who's 6'8". You got the guards are decent rebounders too. The Clippers should win that matchup every time, but they lost, right? Extra possessions, extra opportunities to score and be better. You have to be able to rebound to win games, right? You got to be able to control your turnovers, which the Clippers did, but you got to be able to, really rebound to win games. And they lost the rebounding battle. They shouldn't lose a rebounding battle to a team that's really perimeter oriented in the Dallas Mavericks, right? So that's another problem there too, right? And just some keys, right? So for Dallas, right, they have to get production from Porzingis. The bench guys got to play better, or continue to play the way they're playing. And Doncic just has to continue just to make smart decisions and take whatever the defense gives them, right? That's going to be the key. And then the fourth thing is that they have to make 3-point shots to keep their spacing at bay, right? That's another key point, another thing they have to do. For the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have to play better and play better down the stretch. The bench has to be more have better production. They got to make their open threes, and they got to actually move the ball in game 2. They actually have to show some level of ball movement in order to win. So those are my keys for game 2 for those teams. But again, I think Dallas has a great opportunity to win this series. And I know it's just game 1, but I think the way they play bodes really poorly for the Clippers to, I think, adjust and counteract. That's just the way I look at it. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when I come back, we're going to break down why Khris Middleton needs to be the closer for the Milwaukee Bucks. All that coming back up when we return.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Michael Schroeder, your host for this episode today. Thank you again for tuning in to this podcast. If you missed my previous segment, I talked about the Dallas Mavericks versus Los Angeles Clippers Game 1, and I talked about why I think Dallas Mavericks has a great opportunity to win this series, and why I think the Clippers showed a lot of their same issues from a year ago where they had that massive collapse in the bubble. But with all that being said, this is going to be an interesting segment to wrap up the show, and it pertains to the Milwaukee Bucks and why I think Khris Middleton needs to be their closer. And this comes after their Game 1 win against Miami, where they won 109-107 in overtime, where Khris Middleton hit a game-winning pull-up kind of fadeaway jump shot, dribbling right on the right wing area kind of situation to win the game and put the Bucks up 1-0 over the Miami Heat. And just for some context for you guys, the Bucks have struggled the last 2 years in the postseason, right? They got to the Eastern Conference Finals during Giannis Antetokounmpo's first MVP season. They won the first 2 games against Toronto, but then proceeded to lose the next 4 because the Toronto built a wall against Giannis and he wasn't able to adjust to that. Then last year in the bubble, they beat Orlando very easily. Then they played against Miami, and Miami built a great wall to stop Giannis Antetokounmpo. Worked really well. Giannis didn't play very well. The other guys didn't really step up as well as they would like to, and they lost in 5 games to Miami. And Miami ended up getting to the NBA Finals. So that's a kind of a different thing there, right? Then you have the fact that Giannis has been shut down because he cannot shoot effectively from the outside, right? Giannis is a guy who loves to drive to the rim. He's not really great in the post either. He's kind of like a face-up guy, just drive to the basket, right? Drive to the basket, Euro step, drive to the basket, spin, anything like that, right? And another reason is that they're playing Miami, who beat them in the 2020 NBA playoffs in 5 games, like I just mentioned earlier, and they're playing them this year in the first round of the playoffs, right? And they have high expectations, and they haven't been able to get over the hump, and they have to be able to do that, right? Or else, Budenholzer's going to be in trouble of losing his job. They might make changes to the personnel because Giannis signed that Supermax deal, and they have a lot of pressure on them, right? So game one against Miami, they like I said, they won 109-107 in overtime. The Bucks did at least, and Giannis had 26 and 18, which is pretty good numbers, but he struggled once again against a wall-like defense. He was 10 of 27 from the floor, which is just above 33% from the floor, not very good. He had 5 missed free throws in the fourth quarter, which is just not good at all, right? Like down the stretch, he missed, he went 1 out of 2 in big spots. Khris Middleton did have 27 and hit the game winner, though. He was 10 of 22 from the floor, which is about 45%, and he played really, really well. Him and Drew Holiday actually had really good games. But the Bucks only shot 16.1% from 3, and like I said, and again, like the Bucks are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the NBA, and I think that's their worst three-point shooting game under the Budenholzer era since he's been a head coach there. So that's another key thing that happened. And then you look at the fact that the wall from Miami showed again Giannis's flaws, right? Giannis is not elite level post player. He's not an elite level jump shooter. And I liked how Giannis was being really aggressive. I think that's great, but he hasn't really developed yet the idea of understanding how to go against that defense or developing a post game or having a mid range game that he can go to. He still hasn't had that yet in his game. And look, he's unbelievable. He's very dominant, but he struggles against these types of defenses, right? Which is why I think if he goes against a team like Brooklyn, he actually will have more success because Brooklyn doesn't have the personnel to stop him in that situation, right? Miami does, and Miami's going to make it very difficult. It's why I think this series will ultimately go 7 games because teams are going to have to make adjustments, and Budenholzer is going to have to make adjustments too because we all know Spoelstra will. And for Miami, Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler both played terrible. Jimmy Butler was 4 of 22 and had 17 points, and Bam Adebayo only had 9 points. But Duncan Robinson had 24 points, and Goran Dragic had 25 off the bench. And that's important, right? Their others stepped up big, and it made things really – and their defense was fantastic, which made things also really difficult for the Bucks as they were trying to, make a push to try and win this game. So that's kind of a little bit of the context there. And it was a great game. I mean, it was an incredible game on so many different levels because it's just the way that the defense was played, the way that, in a sense, that the Bucks were able to overcome the adversity, the way that the Bucks were able to at least get a confidence boost against Miami, who really took their soul and their heart last year in the playoffs. So you watch all that in context, you watch all the way they played, and you watch it and you say, oh, well, they got a great opportunity to win the series. And they do, right? They do. And I like the fact that Giannis stayed aggressive. I like the fact that Giannis was not giving up against this wall. But Giannis did not make his free throws at all down the stretch. I think he was 6 of 13 overall from the free throw line. Khris Middleton, I think, was 4 of 7, and Drew Holiday was 2 of 4. The only guy who was consistent from the line was Brook Lopez, actually. I think he was like 7 of 7. And he actually played well. I think he had 15 points in that game, too. And Drew Holiday had 18. And a lot of key steals, too. So it's important because I think that, this game showed a lot of the things that both teams need to adjust to and also, who the closers on both teams are going to be, right? Jimmy Butler tied the game with that running layup. He's the closer for the Miami Heat team, right? He didn't play very well, but everyone knows that Jimmy Butler, I still consider him the best shooting guard in the NBA, right? I've seen him play in big-time moments and play to his potential. I think he's going to play much better in Game 2, and that the Bucks need to be prepared for that. And for, Milwaukee, right, I think, Giannis has to make his free throws. Giannis has to stop overthinking. And Giannis has to also just get easier position in the post where he just can turn and dunk it, right? If they're going to wall you off, stop trying to drive on everything, right? Get points, running the fast break. Get points off rebounds. He also missed a bunch of shots around the rim that he normally makes, right? So I think that, he'll hopefully get better as the series goes on. Bam Adebayo, I think, played great defense on Giannis, but he's got to be better on the offensive end, and I expect him to be. And look, the shooting on Miami always makes them a really dangerous team, and the fact that Spoelstra is also their coach makes things very difficult for for teams trying to eliminate Miami, just because Spoelstra understands what is needed to at least win an NBA championship, right? So that's the other point there. So now, getting on to the important part of this segment, which is why Khris Middleton needs to be the closer for the Bucks, right? Because Khris Middleton had that game-winning shot. He's a guy that is a perennial. I mean, look, he's been a perennial All-Star for a couple of years, and He's a very, very talented player. He's got great size at 6'8". He can defend guys at multiple positions. He can shoot over a lot of guys. He's got a mid-post game. He's got the ability to shoot threes at a very high level, ability to get to the rim. I mean, he's a very, very good player. So a lot of people, get down on him because he hasn't always played so high leverage in the playoffs at times. But he is a very, very good player. And you even look at guys like Drew Holiday and his contributions defensively to the Bucks in Game 1. This Bucks team is definitely a better team. But I definitely think in order for them to be the best team they can possibly be, Giannis can't be the closer yet until he learns how to get more skilled. In terms of, I know Giannis has the ability to handle the ball very well. I know he can get by anyone. But the thing is, it's more like having patience and having a post game, having a mid-range game, having a mid-range jump shot, being able to hit a three on occasion, hit free throws, right? Giannis needs to get more skilled, right? Giannis lives off his athleticism, his strength, and everything like that more so than I think his skill, right? You look at compare him to a Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant can shoot from anywhere. Kevin Durant can shoot from the mid range. He's got a post game. It's very different, right? Very, very different. It's why Kevin Durant's better than Giannis Antetokounmpo. But with that being said, in order for the Bucks to meet their potential, Khris Middleton has to be their closer, right? And I have a few reasons why that is, right? Khris Middleton can, number one, create his shot from the perimeter. Giannis, the only thing that Giannis can create from the perimeter is being able to drive to the basket and lay up or dunk it, right? Khris Middleton creates his own shot to shoot a three, to get a mid-range jumper, to get to the rim, right, to create for other guys, right? He's a guy that can just create his own shot with no problem, right? Drew Holiday's the same way, but I think Khris Middleton, with his size, it's hard to guard that, right? And he can create from the perimeter, which at the end of the game, whenever you're trying to give the ball to a guy to win the game, he's got to be able to create his own shot from the perimeter and at least be a threat for the three-point line, be a threat for the mid-range, and be a threat going to the basket, which Khris Middleton can score at all three levels. Giannis can really only score at the basket. So you put Giannis in that kind of dunker spot under the basket, you allow Khris Middleton to create from the perimeter. That's the first reason why I look at him and say, well, this guy can still be a guy you have to give the ball to at the end of the games, right? The second reason, like I just said, he can shoot. Khris Middleton's been a guy who's historically like a 50, 40, 90 guy around that almost the year. He shot 40% from three this year. He's a guy that you can trust shooting from mid-range, shooting from three, and that makes him a closer, right? Because you look at the great closers of all time. You look at LeBron James, right? He can shoot from the perimeter and get to the rim, obviously, right? But LeBron can hit it. Kobe Bryant, right? Michael Jordan, Kevin Durant, right? Even Kawhi Leonard can shoot it, right? Luka Doncic. You can look at Larry Bird. Even if you want to go back that far, right? Reggie Miller, right? These guys could shoot, right? And having the ability to shoot makes you tough to guard, especially with Khris Middleton being 6'7", 6'8". Just being able to rise over guys and knock shots down, and the fact that he can shoot makes him a threat, right? And making him a threat is going to be even that much more difficult because Giannis can't shoot, right? He can't. I know he's improved it and everything like that, but he can't shoot. And also Giannis can't make free throws. So at the end of the day, you need a guy who's going to be able to create. I'm not saying Giannis is not the best player on the team, but again, you have to have a guy that can create, has a good handle, can create his own shot any which way, and can shoot the ball. And Khris Middleton, and with his size, Khris Middleton becomes that option for you, right? Drew Holiday can create his own shot, but Drew Holiday's about 6'3", 6'4", and with a taller defender, sometimes that's harder to shoot over that. Khris Middleton will be able to shoot over any guy that guards him pretty much because he's like 6'8", so 6'7", 6'8", so he's going to be able to shoot over anyone. And the fact that he's also a very efficient shooter makes things also very difficult for the defense to stop that. And also makes it more attractive for him to become a end-of-game closer for this team to win a championship, right? So I look at that, and I say at the end of the day, Khris Middleton, the fact that he can shoot, you have to put him in that situation. Because you need a guy that's going to be able to create his own shot and make things difficult for the defense to gauge on how they're going to guard you. Like you watch the way Miami plays, they're preparing for anyone to drive. They're not preparing for a guy to hit a fadeaway. It's very different. The third reason that he actually is efficient in the playoffs in terms of hitting game-winning shots or game-tying shots, he's 3 out of 6 in these type of moments. That's 50%, right? That's very, very good, right? I know it's a small sample size, right, because Giannis is taking a bunch of shots and so have other guys in the Bucks, but being 3 out of 6, that's trustworthy. I can trust that, right? I can trust a guy that's 3 out of 6 in big moments and say that guy can get the job done for me, right? Because you want to be efficient in the clutch. You want to be efficient down the stretch. And the fact that he can shoot, the fact that he's willing to shoot it, the fact that he can create from the perimeter, the fact that he's also efficient, right, gives me a lot of trust there, right? Because if you're not efficient down the stretch, if you're not efficient making shots down the stretch, it's obvious, right? No one's going to really trust you to make those shots, right? But the fact that he's efficient should bode a lot more confidence, because you want a guy that's going to be elite at that, ability to create his own shot and make shots down the stretch. And to be honest, he's efficient, right? 3 out of 6 in playoff moments. And this wasn't just this game winner. He's hit one against Boston. I think last year he hit one against Miami. So the guy, is a really good player, obviously, and he's a guy that's efficient. And being efficient allows the Bucks to have some more confidence in that they can win these type of games, right? So at the end of the day, he's just got to you got to give him the ball because he's efficient in these moments. He can create a shot from perimeter and he can shoot it, right? And the fourth reason is that basically Giannis is going to have more defensive attention, right? Giannis is a guy that attracts a lot of defensive attention because he can't be guarded one-on-one because of his ability to get to the basket. He's 6'11", he's faster than any guy that's guarding him. He's big, he's strong. He can handle the ball really well for his size, right? So you have the fact that you have more defensive attention, right? Which gives Khris Middleton the opportunity to go one-on-one with the guy that's guarding him. And Khris Middleton is actually, he's been a 20-point-a-game scorer the last 3 or 4 years. And what's crazy about that, too, is that, you're having a guy that's that talented, right? That talented, that can, shoot over the top. Again, like I said, Khris Middleton's a guy who shoots 89.8% from the free throw line. So if you foul him, he can get in positions where he can easily make those free throws. He's a guy that also shoots 41.4% from three. He's a guy that shoots 46.7% from the floor. And he's averaging 20 points a game this year. So he's a guy that you can trust in the situations because Giannis has a lot of defensive attention on him. So the thing is, you have a guy in Khris Middleton that can go one-on-one where you can trust him in those situations, right? He's got good size, being 222 pounds. That's decent enough strength, right? You have to be understanding of that, right? That's kind of the way he's going to play and how important it has to be for him to be able to, get the ball at the end of the games where there's going to be more attention, paid on to Giannis because Giannis is just that, level of talent, right? And that's important to understand for people, watching this team play is that Khris Middleton's always going to have one-on-one opportunities, right? He play and the funny thing is one of his nicknames is called Baby Joe Johnson. He plays a lot like Joe Johnson, right? And having that ability to score in the mid-post, having that ability to create a shot off the dribble and get into the mid-range and pull up, having the ability to step back and knock down threes, right? And when you have less defensive attention played on that, that gives you more opportunities to free up and get a shot at the end of the game. And that's why he needs to be the closer for this team. Needs to be the closer, right? And look, that's not a slight on Giannis because Giannis is unbelievable. But again, Giannis was 10 of 27 in game one. Giannis was 6 of 13 from the free throw line, right? And Giannis is historically a guy who doesn't shoot very well from the perimeter, right? He was 30% this year, right? For his career, he's 28.7% from three, right? He's a guy that's incredibly good at getting to the basket and doing stuff around the rim, but he's not a guy that you can trust shooting the three. And he's also a guy that's going to get more of the defensive attention, right? So the fact that he gets more of the defensive attention, you need a guy that's going to be able to close who can shoot over the top of defenders and be consistent at doing that. Khris Middleton is that guy, right? Khris Middleton is that guy to be able to do that and a guy that you can trust in those situations, right? And, when you have one-on-one opportunities, you got to have a guy you say, you know what, you give him the ball, he can create in those one-on-one opportunities and get the job done, right? Look at a Kobe Bryant. You look at a Damian Lillard, right? I forgot to mention Damian Lillard. Think about Damian Lillard, right? He can shoot from anywhere on the court, and he can create his own shot with the best of them, right? He has a mid-range game. He has a incredible three-point shot. He can get to the rim, right? Carmelo Anthony was the same way, right? Why he was so trusted with Denver and with the Knicks is because you can give him the ball in the mid-post. He can score no problem. You can give him the ball from three. He can shoot it. He can get to the rim, right? He's a consistent free throw shooter, right? And the greater point, though, and I'm going to emphasize again, is since Khris Middleton will have one defender most of the time on him, sometimes we'll get the whole team, but mostly we'll have one guy on him. And Miami prepares more for paint drives by Giannis. He's going to get an opportunity to get a shot off anytime he wants. So look, he's going to miss shots. That happens. But if he's the closer on that team, and you put Giannis in the paint positions where he can succeed, you're putting the Bucks in prime position to be a really good team too. So that's an important point to distinguish right here too. Is that whole situation as well, right? And another point is that, look, it's hard to defend a guy that can score at all three levels, right? Just think about it, right? If a guy, the reason why Kevin Durant is so hard to guard is because he can shoot from three, he can shoot from the mid-range, he can score from the, going to the basket, and also, look, he can score from the post, right? He can shoot over the top of you, right? Giannis can't really do that. Giannis can, post up and dunk on you and can drive to the rim. Drew Holiday can do all those things, but he can't really always shoot over the top of someone. And I'm going to make that point. This is the point that why Khris Middleton needs to be a closer. He's efficient in those moments too, right? He's 3 out of 6 in the playoff situations. That's really good, right? LeBron James, I think, in playoff moments, shoots like 47%. And I think he's like right now, historically, like one of the best ever. And I think he has the most game winners in the playoff situations. So Khris Middleton being 50% is very, very good. So give Khris Middleton the ball, right? Make him the closer of the team, because it's harder to guard a guy that can score at all three levels, that can shoot over anyone, but also it's going to get less defensive attention, a guy who's efficient in those moments, and a guy that takes less pressure off of Giannis to have to be that closer at the end of the game, right? And that's not a slight on Giannis, but Giannis is not ready yet because of his skill set to be that closer, right? And Khris Middleton needs to be the closer on that team, right? I mean, think about it, guys, right? You want a guy that you can trust that can score from anywhere on the court. You don't trust Giannis with that, right? It's like on the Sixers, right? I would go to Tobias Harris or Joel Embiid over Ben Simmons, right? It's not a slight against Ben Simmons at all, but I would trust Tobias Harris to hit a mid-range jump shot or a three-point jump shot. I don't even trust Joel Embiid to do the same thing, right? On the Nuggets, right, I would trust Nikola Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. over like an Aaron Gordon. Obviously, yes, they're better players, but their skill sets, right? You even look at the other teams around the league, right? The reason why I trust Jimmy Butler in the clutch is because he can get to the rim, he can score from the mid-range, and he can hit threes if you need him to, right? It's why people trust Donovan Mitchell in the clutch over like a Rudy Gobert, right? Zach LaVine over Nikola Vucevic. The list goes on and on, guys, right? But that's the point I'm making, is that Khris Middleton needs to be the guy in the clutch that can be trusted because of what he brings from a skill set perspective, right? And that's important to understand, right? He brings a lot of different skill sets. He brings a lot of different stuff to the floor. And the fact that he's going to have less defensive attention on him because of Giannis being on the court with him, who's a top 5 player in the league, gives him a great opportunity to be that efficient closer that he has been so far in the playoffs, all being it has been a small sample size. And that's an important thing to distinguish there, right? So when we all break this down, that's the point I'm going to make right there, right? Khris Middleton needs to be the closer of this team, and in order for them to be successful, he has to be that closer. So that's ultimately from them going to game 2, they have to consider that, right? They have to trust that. And Giannis just needs to be better, right? He needs to make more free throws and just be a little bit more efficient. And I think Milwaukee will be in good shape going forward. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast today. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like what you heard, give us a 5-star rating on any podcast platform you listen to, as well as subscribe to us on those platforms. And like and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and you can interact with us on that as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Mike Schroeder from the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I will see you guys soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.